I got ADHD, baby. I set my goals, not your expectations, baby. I need my tools and a brain vacation, baby. Neurodivergent flow, no limitation, baby.
Um, so everyone, thank you for joining. We are going to be, I'm just going to put the topic in the comments, but it's on the post too. But I have lovely Jessica here. She is a colleague of mine and a friend from, God, I don't know how long have we
Over
known each other
15
now?
years ago, girl.
Thanks.
It's been that long.
Oh, geez. Yeah, so we used to work together at an early intervention program. And so we have known each other since then. And so, I mean, it was a great opportunity to meet a lot of people, but we both don't work there now. But she was a fabulous OT. And so I asked her to come on here with me on IG to chat about OT related topics and ADHD. So sensory, and then Jessica, this is clearly your field, so you can elaborate a little bit more.
Sure.
Um, and I'll definitely I want you to introduce yourself because you're just doing so many amazing things now, and I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you, Megan. Even though you can't see me, I'm giving you a big heart of love. So,
Yeah, I'll do it too. I
so
don't know how does
nice.
this new generation do it.
Yeah,
Um,
they do like the thumb. Okay, so I'm Jessica. As Megan said, by trade, I am an occupational therapist. I am an interesting person because I'm transitioning now to a non-clinical role. So my specialty is pediatrics, specifically school systems, which is where Megan and I met. I have a bachelor's in health sciences, a master's in occupational therapy, a doctorate in occupational therapy, and then I decided, hey, wouldn't it be great to go back to school? So I'm now graduating next week with my second master's in human development and education with a focus on higher ed from Harvard University.
Again, brilliant. Um, just brilliant. So I couldn't have explained that any better. Um, so thank you again for coming
Of
on
course.
and letting me tap into your brain a little bit when it comes to this work. And I brought up this topic, and I was looking specifically for somebody that has this experience, because I come across like conversations either online in groups or just direct questions from clients around sensory challenges with ADHD. And so I would love to talk through that, but then just any other related topic that, think putting your occupational therapy hat on, and thinking about the connection between the work that you would do as an OT and helping to manage and support adults with ADHD or children.
Anywhere from the littles to the big kids, I gotcha right there. Yeah, so and also too, I like Megan, I am neurodivergent. I have a trifecta, as I affectionately call it. I have ADHD, I have anxiety disorder, and I have something called nonverbal learning disorder. So if you look at, and this is not a political endorsement, it's just an example out in the public, Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, who was the Democratic vice president nominee, has a son, Gus, and his son has those three things. So I like to say that's my profile. It is not a political endorsement whatsoever. So I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
that's there. So and so for me, I am also too not only by trade an occupational therapist. I'm an OT kid. I went through OT when I was little. Mainly and it's very true for NVLDers. We have a lot of what we call dyspraxia. So our mind sees a movement, our body wants to move, but they're not, the wires aren't connecting, or as what my Gen Z friends say, the math ain't mapping. So that's why. um and so you have one of the components of with occupational therapy that we look at is something called sensory processing, sensory integration, sensory. And so what happens is, and this is how I used to explain it a lot to my families, and Megan has heard
Hmm.
this spiel for many, many, many
Yeah.
years from me. So
Thank you, Jessica.
so what it is we have our five senses: sight, smell, sound, taste, touch. Okay, so those are the big ones. Then we have what I call a secondary senses. So we have proprioception, so
Mhm.
that's where your body is in space. So those are all those little baby receptors in your joints, in your muscles. You may hear somebody, you may hear, oh, they're slow to fire. They're just like, it takes them forever just to get up and go, where I can just get up and go. That's somebody with what we call low proprioception awareness.
Mhm.
Very rarely do you ever see somebody with high proprioceptive awareness. Then we're all, it's either you're on that scale of in a neurotypical world, functional, to your very low proprioception. And then we have something called vestibular input. So, and that's movement. So it's your inner canal. So it's the cochlea, which is in the inner part of the ear, and it has all these fun hairs, and then it has like the spine, the fluid. And so if you think about it, when you have an ear infection, or if you have something, or vertigo is a great explanation. You may feel like
Yeah.
something move in your ear, and you're like, oh boy, I can't get up, the room is spinning. So and you can be under responsive,
Mm.
so you need more and more input. So these are the people who never get dizzy. Or you can be over responsive, and those are the ones that, to the point they see a car and they'll get motion sickness. So you have like that whole spectrum of things. Sensory processing, the kind of the godmother of it, just a little bit of context. The godmother of it, Jean Ayres, she started noticing a lot of this in the 60s. And where nowadays what we look at her foundation, and we look at what she brought, and I'm very glad she brought a lot of this to the forefront into talking. But nowadays we look at it, it's really based off of a neurotypical world, and right now
Of
we're
course.
trying to deviate a little bit away from that, instead of us trying to fit a neurodivergent mind into a neurotypical world. It's to make the
Mhm.
neurotypical environment work for the neurodivergent mind. So that Ed hasn't really, the research and the therapeutic intervention really hasn't caught up with that new shift in philosophy. It
Okay.
will, it has to, but I just want to say that as well. It's kind of founded a little bit more on ableist tendencies, and not doing what I think it truly means to do, which is just looking at the whole person and the environment and the interaction.
Yeah, thank you for giving us that background and also explaining some additional senses that people probably didn't even know was a thing,
No.
right? And so when you think about those particular senses, what, in terms of the world of ADHD, what do you feel like is the most common challenge, I
So
guess?
So it's a misnomer. People think ADHD, you're understimulated. It's the exact opposite. You're overstimulated. And
Mhm.
I would say it all depends. So I will say for me, it's visual. I get extremely overwhelmed visually, and it can seem like I'm very inattentive,
Mm.
but it's me trying to take in all this information. So for me, I tend to be more on that sensitive side. Like, I'm sensitive. So a lot of noise. You add a lot of noise. Noise is really a big trigger for me. Visual is a big trigger for me. And so when you have all that
Yeah.
in the mix, so think about like a parade. Oh boy,
Yeah.
it can be a lot. It can be a lot. Trying to
Trying
think,
to think like I'm
yeah.
trying to think about if it's I don't think visual is as big of a problem with me. Um, but the sound definitely is. But honestly, it's the sound after a certain time of day.
Bless
towards
you.
towards the end of the day, everything is needs to be less bright and less noisy.
Yeah, because think about it. You've been up all day and your mind has been trying to work in this neurotypical world and trying to
Right.
figure out what's happening. And then so by the time at the end of the day you're like, forget this. Your brain's like, enough of this.
I'm
I'm going to bed.
over it.
You body, you can do what you want to do, but I'm going night night, as what I used to say to my littles, go night night.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Because after a certain time of day, I'm like, okay. I
mhm,
turn the brightness on my phone down,
mhm,
all the volume goes
mhm.
down, where just everything just feels and sounds louder
Yeah.
in the evening for sure. And I don't think I really connected it to ADHD, really.
I mean, we all, I'm just going to say this in general, we all have, and again, you have heard me say this spiel for like over a decade, which is we all have
Right.
quirks. Quirks
Right.
are what make us no, quirks are what makes us human. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's and it's always on the spectrum. But remember how I used to say kooky, there's a point where you have kooky Uncle Fred, and kooky Uncle Fred is having a real hard time functioning and making the environment work for our kooky Aunt Frida, whatever we want.
Yeah.
Some sort of random aunt and uncle that we don't know about. So, and it's to the point that they can't make the environment work for them, that's when we have an issue. And you'll also too, you'll have people with sometimes as well, and that, again, not an endorsement, just from what I've seen, when you've had pharmacological in, intervention,
Yeah.
that sometimes can kind of lessen it, because if you think about all the fun brain and synapses and how it kind of helps with that communication. But you can still have the medication and still have really funky sensory things that are impacting. We see that a lot when they're younger, because it's easy, because all eyes are on you when you're younger. But
Mm-hmm.
what's happened is as you get older, and particularly with women, I'm going to say this with women, when we think of ADHD, we think of, the boy swinging from the rafters, doing
Yeah.
flips, and you
Yeah.
know whereas with women, we tend to be more inattentive, so we're the daydreamers. My nickname was the satellite for a
I know.
while because I was so like, ooh, all over the place, like, but you
Mm-hmm.
can come off as being loopy and ditzy, and that's not the case. But what happened now is we're starting to have better diagnoses. And so now we're starting to understand the rhyme to the reason. But I'm also too going to say too, for a lot of neurotypical people, when they're hearing a lot in the media, neurodiversity, neurodivergent, and they're like, well, I don't believe that. What does that mean? I'm like, no, 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 you don't understand. But it's
Yeah.
you're looking at somebody with it, and they're like, oh, really? Yeah, really.
Yeah. 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 So, what would you say in terms of thinking about your own experience with accessing OT? What were some helpful exercises that worked for you?
So it's number one, knowing, like, when I was little, I was the one that I needed my cozy little corner with a book. My husband will tell you, you give me a blanket, a book, and a cozy corner, I am as happy as a clam. So for me, it's about, I always feel like I'm completely out, like just everything's out there. I feel like things are out, and so it's trying to find a way to get myself centered. So something called deep pressure is a very, very big thing for me. So I have a weighted blanket. I love my weighted blanket. I have named my weighted blanket. My husband has decided that he likes my weighted blanket. So the weighted blanket has gotten a lot of love around here. For me also too, I have to have things. I have to have things like more visually in line. And it's
Uh,
funny because that's also too something I struggle with, but a lot of it's because I get so overwhelmed. I'll look at something and I'm like, oh, forget it. My brain can't handle it right now. So you see a lot of that. And but a lot of times for me, because I have access to certain things, so I have access to a sensory questionnaire for adults, and I took it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's about right. Low registration, so needing more environmental input for me to recognize a
Oh,
signals, and then sensitivity, too much. So I that whole thing with that regulation is my big thing. And I will say, like, when I am starting to feel like everything, like it feels like I'm going to jump out of my skin, what the first thing I do is I put in my AirPods, I listen to a podcast, and I'm cleaning and I'm happy. So
oh, that's so interesting. It made me think about, I mean, my own behavior, but then it also made me think about, you know, what interventions or quote unquote accommodations or practices that people could put in the context of work when it comes to some of the sensory challenges or just all of these input challenges that they may be experiencing, like in the workplace, right? Because we all know that in work environments in of itself, depending on how they're designed and if they're thoughtfully designed or not,
mm-hmm.
because sometimes we design spaces because it's what's available. We saw that a lot where we worked.
Oh, they called it the bullpen for the reason, and you were lucky because
Yeah,
you got an office.
I know. So just for context, for everybody that's listening, so the space that we worked in,
Too
we
much.
were trying to make an office and evaluation center within a school that was not originally designed for that. And so we just kind of tried to make it work. And so there were a couple of individual offices, but there wasn't a lot of quiet space. And then there was just piles of people in one room. That just was not effective, and especially when people were doing writing and they need to write. They need to connect with some of their colleagues, but they really needed to write and be able to focus and pay attention. So just imagine having ADHD in that space. I mean,
It was
it was hard.
it was a
Between the
lot.
fluorescent lighting, the amount of people, all of the visual stimulation, and people coming in and out, and the distractions, like it just, like I look back at it and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe we did that. Um, but you learn,
Yeah,
you learn
definitely.
along the way. Um,
Mhm.
but you just reminded me of, what other things that people can do to accommodate themselves. Like if you're listening to this and you feel like any of those challenges resonate with you, you talked about having a weighted blanket, putting headphones in. Um, I definitely feel like I need a weighted blanket all the time. Like I can't and if it's not even weighted, just having a blanket,
Oh,
like
totally.
I will turn the temperature down really low and make the room really cold just so that I can put on a
Oh,
blanket.
100%. I also too, a lot of people, what they have done is, some people have had like the standing desk with the treadmill, or you're just sitting at the desk with like the feet bike, so to
Mhm.
speak. That's something that can also too, because that's rhythmic, that you're in a rhythm, it's rhythmic, and it starts to center you a little bit. And also too, to be very honest, there's no shame to stand up and say, I need to step away. And a
Mhm.
lot of times that, um, where I'm at right now, everybody in our office, I'm at Berkeley College of well, until, because your girl's looking for a job right now, but right now, but very fortunately for the summer, my internship got extended. So I'm at Berkeley College of Music in their accessibility resource office as an academic coach. And all of us in there identify with a disability. We have one person that it is a visible disability, and then
Mhm.
there's a rest of us who are more hidden disability. And
Right.
so for us, we've been like, we need to go take a walk, and director's like, okay, go, take a walk, just be back. And not a lot of times it's like the 5 minutes you need just to step away to come back makes
Yeah.
it easier.
Yeah. Taking a break and, environments that allow that without judgment,
Mm-hmm.
inclusive spaces, right? Like they're practicing inclusivity. Because I was talking to something like, for example, I was talking to somebody this weekend and they were working on an assignment and they were doing like a part time, just gig, like an event work. And they needed to put together all of these materials for this event that was happening. And like their instructions were like they couldn't talk, like they couldn't leave, like they just had there was a whole bunch of people packed into this space like on assembly line trying to get all of this work together. And I'm like, that sounds cool for somebody like me. Like there's no way. Like I'm not sitting in a room in silence, putting together this tactile like information and just looking at people, and just thinking about how you can how you are giving instructions like as a leader, as a manager, and how it can really impact people if you're not thoughtful and recognizing how to create inclusive environments. That's my overall point. I feel like I rambled a little bit, but
No, that's, I mean, and you're right on point. And in education, we call it the Universal Design for Learning, UDL. And people receive information in different ways. And so there's a different way you have to find different ways to represent the information. You have to find different ways to motivate from the information. And you have different ways to, trying to think, representation, engagement, think communicates the last one. They're all going to kill me at Harvard if I can't remember the whole thing of the UDL. But it's being able, like, even like the physical environment, being able to set up. Now, it's not talking about somebody has to go in and completely demolish and you're in like your own little pods living your best life. No, that's not that. But there are different ways you can kind of work around it. So like some of the having like a combination of standing desks that can help. You could have like the standing desk with like the nice slow treadmill. You can do like the sitting on therapy balls. That's also great for your posture as well. Trying to
are you still there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And things like to pop up on the phone, so I'm like,
It's okay.
so those are some of like the environmental things that you can do. Engaging information. So some people are more auditory, some people are more visual.
Yeah.
Some people need a combination of both. So for me, I will tell you, for some reason, I resisted using a screen reader for so long. And now, so like a screen reader is, so I use an app, so I have things read to me, but it highlights as it's reading, it's highlighting things. So I need the visual, but I mainly take in the information from the auditory piece, and it has saved my life. And I'm like, why was I resisting this sooner? So it's also too finding, not when somebody provides you with the information, being open to it, being open to
Yeah.
try. And I think for me, and that was kind of like my ableism. I'm like, oh, these are for the students I work with. It's not for me. And then I realized, oh, yeah, it is for me. It is for me too. So and it's so hard, and particularly of like the generation that, I'm not dating us, but the generation that you and I both come from, where it's things like having adaptations and accommodations were seen as something to hide, whereas
Yeah.
now it's just a part of life. You wouldn't hide wearing glasses.
Right.
Why would you hide using something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's what I try to tell people all the time. And especially when the context of like people ask me constantly if they should ask for accommodations at work. And I always preface in saying like, it's a personal decision, but at the same time, like, are we waiting for a problem to happen before we do something about it? Or do we want to be preventative and get the support that you actually need? I understand that it's complicated, especially in the context of work and well, not as much as, well, no, it's complicated in universities too, only because of the way that it's set up.
100%.
Um,
Yeah, the second higher ed's kind of like my big passion. So you definitely, and there are laws that do protect you from with accommodations. So you have in the workplace, it's the
Yep.
ADA slash ADAAA, because it's been revised a few times. So they
Yeah.
have to add on another A every time it's revised. So you have those, and you're protected underneath Title Two and Title Three, I believe, mainly Title Two, I want to say. And then in university, you're protected underneath the
Yeah.
ADAAA, or what we call Section 504. So, and that's
Yeah,
from
as
the
an adult and in the workplace field, federal, you're protected under 504 too.
Mhm.
And so there are protections. The problem is like the stigma and the feeling of like we may be retaliated against,
Well,
and there's a lack of
you.
understanding.
Mhm.
There's a lack of understanding within work environments and within universities too about like how to implement them and how to create inclusive spaces, because people are trained a certain way and they just have this expectation that you're supposed to be able to do things the way that they were trained, and a lot of managers aren't trained at all. And so, and it's like, well, this is the way that I do it, and I just expect everybody else to do it that way, and that's just not how
Well,
things work.
and I think a lot of it is you don't want to come at it in your face, like my younger and more passionate self, little unregulated, would come at somebody. But now what it is, it's about an education. It's more of about a show it, like just show it. But I was telling you like a while back, I am shocked. Like I never thought I'd live to see the day where that Deloitte has a neurodiversity in the workplace program. I never thought I ever would live to see some of like these big four, the big four
Yeah,
firms
yeah,
started. So it's there, it's beginning, because as this is becoming
yeah,
more, I don't even want to say more pronounced because that's kind of ableist there, but it, as people, as more information is being provided,
yeah.
and
People are
you have
starting to
more, you also too have more people. Let me tell you, I always will say, you really don't mess with the disability community whatsoever. They will come after. I someone's like, you're like, don't mess, which
yeah,
is why like a lot of
and
these things now, like with the people are worried about protections and stuff. No, right,
it's not
don't.
going anywhere. And and they tried it. I mean, even this current administration tried it, and they tried to go after 504, and they dropped the suit.
Well, because of the, well, and also too, if you think back, about close to 10 years ago, where they were trying to take away funding from the Special Olympics, and that went over like a lead balloon. So,
Yeah, it doesn't
so,
work.
and I mean, but also too, a lot is you have to have in order to receive accommodations, and I'm gonna also too come
Yeah,
from
I
it
guess
from
it's just,
a higher ed setting, is you have to have documentation of a disability,
mhm,
and the definition of a disability. I'm trying, Bill, who is my law teacher. Hopefully I can explain this. So what a disability is like you have, they have a list of conditions.
mhm,
Um, so it can be anywhere from something like a peanut allergy
yeah,
to, as we're getting into more the physical
yeah,
disabilities, you're getting more into like the ADHD, the mental health. And what it is it's like you either currently have it or you had one in the past and it has impacted your life
yeah,
without supports. So that, and so you have Title Two and Title Three. Title Two is public, and Title Three is talking about like the spaces. If I'm remembering, I
yeah.
only have
And
this
for
like
those
a
that
month.
are interested in more of ADA content, I think so if you go to my YouTube channel, so all of the IG lives are reposted on YouTube. And we did one specifically on the ADA and
Okay.
workforce accommodations, and we also did a separate one too around um, college college access and support too.
So
And I might do another one.
yeah.
Um,
What I also do want to say as well, and this is something for y'all to remember, an ESA, so an emotional support animal, is not covered underneath ADA. It's only
yeah,
service animals are, and the only
yeah,
two animals who are considered to be service animals are a dog
Yep.
and a small horse.
Yep. Exactly. And I think I'm actually doing a presentation with the ADA centers in June next month. We're going to be hosting something and talking about ADA in more detail.
Mm-hmm.
But just going back to some of the, the areas in which you would address. So I did not connect. So you had talked about using a treadmill under your standing desk. So I do that all of
Yeah.
the time, right? Um, and it definitely helps me focus. But I've always thought about it as a form of exercise in increasing my dopamine and helping to support me to be able to focus and be engaged. I did not connect it to the rhythm
Yeah,
of the
there's a
of the
rhythm.
movement.
There is a rhythm to it. So you walk at a cadence, you walk. So, and if you think about it, exercise, the endorphins, yeah, that's huge and that plays a role, but it also too, it's just a way of centering yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so for those of us that have low registration with proprioception, aka me here, um, having that repetitive and having that, you're getting hard input to the joints. So it's like, okay, it's waking me up. I can move. That's why, like, you'll see me. I love lifting weights because it's pushing and pulling or I'm walking with the treadmill at like a 7% incline because I need that obviously the dopamines, obviously the sweat, the cardiovascular, but it's serving like waking up those proprioceptors. So I'm like, okay, I'm centered, I'm organized. Let's get on with it.
Yeah. So okay, this is so fascinating because I definitely that was just a whole other area of just human development or just practice that I just was not thinking about. But I'm so glad that you brought that up because now I'm going to really be pushing people to get to walk or just do some type of movement while you're.
Yeah, movement's fantastic. Movements do not knock movement out, and people, or even you can, what I used to do with my younger ones, you can go on YouTube and like the box breathing method. So it's like
Mhm.
inhale for like 5, hold for 3, exhale for 4, like, and so that's working on like that breath work. That a lot of things connect, like a lot of things that we do to quote unquote relax, it's not necessarily about a relaxation. It's about more of bringing yourself to center.
Yeah, yeah. So it's recognizing when you need that additional input.
Mm-hmm.
So so explain it to me a little bit again because I feel
Sure.
like my brain is going all over the place a little bit. And so there's like you need input, but then you also need to be relaxed. And so, but
Well,
I guess it's the same thing.
it's about so.
So I'm
Trying,
thinking about like a weighted blanket versus walking on a treadmill.
well, I mean, they kind of serve its same purpose. It's about centering.
Okay.
It's about the centering. So for me, but for me, I will tell you this program. I was on the treadmill with my screen reader and my AirPods reading articles so I could take in that information. Sometime but like when I'm going to bed, I have the weighted blanket with me because that also too brings me centered. And I remember I had a little like many, many, many years ago. I could see her walking down the hall and she was like this. And I'm like, she's like this. We want to get her to this. So
Mhm.
it's about, and also too, in many ways, it's being in control of your body. So I would even say like core strengthening can definitely because and I had a dance teacher and Megan knows that I've been dancing pretty much my whole life and the big joke was in the office like what performance are you doing now?
Mhm.
So but I had a dance teacher that said if you're not in connection with your core, you're not in connection with your body. And
Yeah.
so that's some like so those type of things, like anything that gets, anything that works on stability, anything that works on, works on getting you centered. That's why also too, even though yoga, people are like, oh, no, yoga doesn't. My favorite yoga is Bikram yoga. Well, they don't call it Bikram yoga anymore. They call it
Oh, they
hot
don't?
yoga,
Oh,
which, well, but that's the yoga that worked for me, because I needed something, because I couldn't go off into like meditation land. That's just not the way my brain
yeah.
works. If it works for you, fantastic. Do what you got to do. But just for me, when they start talking about jumping over the meadow, I'm like, you kind of lost me here. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why I prefer, or prefer like a yoga with a flow.
Yeah.
So,
Yoga flow works for me well. I mean, it took me a long time. I'm glad that you brought up yoga a little bit because I always mention it, but it was a real process for me, especially with like having ADHD, well, an undiagnosed ADHD at the time. And it wasn't until I really understood it holistically and like the eight limbs that it made sense to me. And then once I practiced this, and then I took a yoga teacher training. Um, it was like a yoga. It was intensive. Like it was a two week intensive yoga training. I mean, so we did yoga for like hours a day. But that was when I felt the best in my life. But when I think about it, it was the connection to the earth. It was connection to my core. It was doing meditative practices through motion, and practicing holding positions and relaxing and calming my mind, and that's when it really started to connect with me. So like now doing yoga, I definitely can only do it still with certain instructors. I think the instructor really makes a big difference.
100%.
Um, um, because I'm with you. I'm like, I'm not trying to go through the forest. And so,
No, and roll around like a duck. No,
yeah.
no, thank you.
But like a really good instructor and really good music. And so, I do yoga to gospel music, to jazz. Like I do it to all different types of R&B. I think I took like a Michael Jackson class. Like, and so having a really good playlist also makes a really big difference. And but it was then where I felt like I was really able to calm my mind. And we know that, like, there's a lot of research around meditative practices and the improvement in neural connections. And it really did help, but it took a while to get over that hump for sure. Because I was definitely that person that was talking to everybody in the middle of the yoga class.
Well, and also too, what people have to understand, like what's meditative for one person is like, I don't get this. Where so like
Yeah.
so you may
And
have
I had to learn it through movement. And like I couldn't just sit there and be quiet. I was thinking about everything underneath the sun.
Mhm.
But like practicing meditation through movement.
I am an outdoors person. I love walks. I love
Mhm.
walks. I love the sunshine. We're really lucky. We live in Boston, and so I can walk like, and where I can walk is I'm near the Boston Common, the public
Yeah.
garden, which is really, really, really lovely. Now, unfortunately, I can only do it for a finite amount of time of the year, because other times I have like I'll have like five weighted blankets on me and saying
Yeah.
it's too cold. So
Yeah, weather is the weather gets colder.
you from
I'm from
this
New
area,
England, so
you know.
yeah, I'm from New England, so I get it. Um, but I feel like this whole conversation is explaining my whole life. And thinking about just to highlight some of the I don't want to call them interventions, but some of the strategies, I guess it like individuals, if any of this content resonates with you, some of the strategies that we talked about, like movements, walking in a treadmill, using a weighted blanket, putting in headphones, getting in, but it all really starts with really understanding what is going on with you and understanding your needs.
100%.
Um,
No, yeah.
and it sounds like getting an OT assessment.
No, no. So what we also do have to remember, like I will say for the littles, they don't have the lane, and it doesn't matter. Like you cannot have, you don't have to have a language delay. And you got a little one. Like they they don't have the language to connect the feelings
Right.
with it. So what are they going to do? They're going to show you in behavior. So that's why that's 2-year-olds have tantrums because they have they know they they're feeling something, but they can't express it. So what are they going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to show you through behavior. So a lot of it is you need an OT assessment like when they're little, yeah, just because but when you're grown, you don't necessarily need the OT assessment. You just can always consult an OT, that's fine. But a
Yeah.
lot of OTs that work with adults, they don't really, it's more in the physical disability realm. It's not so much in like kind of what I did, which is pediatrics.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing now what I'm doing now with higher education, it's a whole other, it's a different realm as well.
So
So
if you, so if you're a person, and you're like, what are some of the things that you can pay attention to or bring some awareness around what's happening with you, so then you can put in some of these strategies?
bringing like kind of being in tune
Yeah,
with.
I guess I'm trying to ask, like, what are some things that you would notice about yourself? Because, like, I didn't think about, so for example, like needing a blanket, right? Um, or just knowing, having that feeling, like when I go to bed, wanting something heavier.
Yeah, yeah, so for me, a lot of it is like my sign, like my where I start to realize, oh, I'm heading into way big overstimulation is like just kind of the physiological signs. So for me, it feels like I literally want to crawl out of my skin. Um,
Mhm.
I can be so focused because it's taken so much to focus on and my sweet husband who is neurotypical. I'll say something and then as I'm doing, he wants something extra and I one time got really mad. I'm like, do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do that? And so he's like, oh, I want you to, I'm like, thank you. I will get to the other part when I'm done, but you can't keep throwing things at me. So I start to notice that, and that's when I'm like, okay, I kind of have to take a little bit of a step back. Now
Yeah.
the work I'm doing now, um, it's not as overstimulating, not like
Mhm.
what we the environment that we worked in, or even when I've worked just in schools in general, it's can be very, very, very it can be very, very, very overstimulating with the noise, and then you have middle school boys who think they're grown and they start acting up and it just gets to be too much. But that's what I notice with me is I notice like an or start to have like an overreaction. That's when I'm like, oh, okay,
Hmm.
I need to take a step back.
Yeah, our previous work environment was super overstimulating. There was just so much going on. There was so much going on at any given moment. Like
Well,
I don't even know if I got
and
things done.
also too, there's a lot of that, and then you had like so many personality clashes. So when you have people who react to things differently, and that's not the reaction they're gonna have, it was, and we saw a lot of that. We saw a
Mhm.
lot of like upheaval, and I don't know if you were, yeah, you had a it popped in my head with the like that one of the many team building things we did before where we had, and I'll never forget it. It was like putting to take it was like a whole bunch of sticks, and then there's this picture and they're like everybody has to work together to take these sticks to put in the picture, and I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm okay. I'll hold this and be happy, but no, thank you. I'm not. That's just gonna. So it's also too knowing your limits,
Yeah.
right? And so you don't have to. So if something is difficult, you don't want to be like, oh no, I'm not gonna do it. But you find your niche. So like that, I saw that. I started to get really overwhelmed. I'm like, no, you know what? I'll be the holder. I'll hold that
Yeah.
wood, and I'll hold that wood to the best of my ability. So
Yeah. And one of also hearing you saying, but not saying also is, and this is, I feel like I have this conversation a lot actually with my clients too, just around not only just increasing awareness around what's going on with you, but just in being able to articulate your needs and
Mm-hmm.
then put in boundaries in place to
100%.
ensure that you get those needs met.
100%. It's relation.
And,
Like it's
yeah.
about a relationship. And we have relationships with each other. We have a relationship with our environment. We have
Mhm.
the relationship with our body. We have the relationship with our, it's all about, it's all about that and learning how to negotiate that. Now, before, I would say I'd even say even 10 years ago, you know, you have the neurodivergent mind. You felt this ultimate pressure to fit into a neurotypical world.
Right.
Whereas now that kind of pressure and anxiety is being alleviated because we have the better understanding is make the environment work
Uh-huh.
for the person. So
Yeah, and I've been asked to from people like, how long does it take to like get to the other side? And so, and the other side is just acceptance, right? Like, how long does it take to get to the acceptance side? Because that's where I feel like I'm at. Like, I feel like, listen, I have ADHD. These are the things that are going on with me. These are my brain. This is how my brain works. These are what my needs are, and I'm not going to position myself to compromise anymore. Because the compromising and neglecting my needs did not work.
no, and
Um,
that causes more issues than health.
yeah, it
And
causes more problems. And like, am I there 100% no? Because you checked me a couple times in this call that you don't realize that you did. Thinking about my own growth and recognizing that there are some needs that I need to really actually prioritize. Um,
mhm.
that you don't even know that you checked me, but you did.
Okay.
um,
But I also too was just gonna say, as women, I think we put far too much on ourselves, and
you know,
particularly those of you who are parents. Like,
yep.
hats off to you. I mean, me being I the only the people I have to work the only role right now I play outside of myself and outside of being a student is a wife. And I mean, and
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, so for those of you who are in partnerships with kids, or you are co-parenting with kids, or you're on your own holding it down. I mean, we just put so much on ourselves, and we need
Yeah.
to be able to, we need, and it's so much easier said than done.
So
It
much
is
easier.
so much easier.
And it, because, there's also all these social pressures that you're supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z, but you
Mhm.
really just need to be clear about what it is that you need, and prioritize that for yourself. And I know in a lot of the ADHDers like tend to be in the people pleasing um,
100%.
space with their life and kind of neglect. And I mean, I'm notorious. I have a long history of people pleasing, and not articulating my needs. But it has helped to be on the other side of acceptance.
And I think
um,
also too, I was thinking about this a lot because I didn't get diagnosed until 3 years ago. And for me, looking back at like high school, look and particularly college, I had a really, really hard college. Very, very hard. Very, very hard. And it's pretty painful to like kind of thinking back on it. And there was a reason to the madness. And and so, but because of that hard time, I felt
yeah.
so much shame that, let me tell you, we all have imposter syndrome. Well, my imposter syndrome went on like 100% Wile E. Coyote running through
Hmm.
running through the wall, like type thing. And it probably took me, I would say, like even working where we worked before, where you would have me do presentations on motor development, and you would say, oh my god, that was amazing. I'm like, no, it's not. So it's a huge, and it's not about humility. There's a difference between being humble
Yeah.
and feeling like you're not worthy. And
Yeah.
what you have to remember is, we're all trying to figure it out. We're all going to fall flat on our face. We're all going to, we're going to be we're all
Hmm.
going to be in situations where, you're going to fail. And we're just gonna, the big F word, it's fail. It's okay to say fail.
Yeah.
it's, but it's one of these things where you significantly learn,
Yeah.
significantly learn from it. So,
Yeah. Well, Jessica, this conversation has been amazing. We've been talking, the hour went by really quickly.
yeah,
Um,
it did.
but I want to thank you for coming on today and joining us and talking about all of these challenges. And I definitely have some things that I need to reflect on after this
Aw.
call. Myself, and so I appreciate that. And so for those that are listening or listening to the replay, just to let you know that I do have some other things coming up. So actually just was coming back to talk to our Thrive group, and we're going to be talking about transition. So if you identify as a woman with ADHD, I do have a group coaching program that you are more than welcome to join. You can just send me a DM, or you can go to my profile and there's some more information about that. But we talk a lot about all things ADHD. When we do weekly group coaching, there's some special guests, and you have access to all of the previous recordings. This is some other content. And then there's, like I did a goals workshop. We had financial advisors come in. So there's a lot of information, a lot of good information there. So feel free to check that out and to or ask me some questions about it. You can always sign up to do a free consultation with me as well if you are interested in all of that. And then Jessica, what do you have any things coming up for you that you want to tell the
Well,
audience about?
I'm graduating from Harvard. That's the thing. That right now is the big thing.
Yeah.
Now trying to find full-time employment,
Hmm.
particularly in the university higher ed realm. But considering the way things are flowing now, it's
Yeah.
being open to anything.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I need to put in my proposal, but I'm probably going to be presenting at a Massachusetts Association for Occupational Therapy,
Sure.
MAOT, and I'm either going to do something on evidence-based practice, or I'm going to do something on networking, particularly with the informational interview, which
Okay.
have been like, that's been a whole other amazing experience for me. And that's a tool that Harvard gave me to do. So
Okay. Oh, we should talk about that.
yeah.
Um, talk about that offline. But if anybody that's listening, and like, let me tell you, she's brilliant, obviously. And so, if you know of anybody and you want to build some connections, please connect with her,
Mhm.
or just tell me to connect with her, and so that you can offer her some additional opportunities. For some amazing, amazing work. But thank you again for coming on today. I really
I
appreciate you, and I
appreciate
will see you
you.
later on this week.
Bye.
So, bye. Bye, everybody.